All right, welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we have Wendy Papasan, and she is here to discuss wealth building with us in our real estate community. So Wendy, just so you know, we had sent an invite out. We are part of 5 offices. I'm an OP of 5 offices, and there are about 570, 580 agents. So we invited all of them to come and pick your brain about wealth building, specifically kind of how you went from maybe real estate sales to kind of your journey into wealth building, and talk a little bit about that. They are going to be submitting questions in the live chat. This is for them. They're going to submit live questions, and then I'll filter through to them and get them to you. But before we get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and kind of where you are today in your wealth building journey.
Sure. Thanks, Caleb. And thank you for having me today. It's an honor. I'm glad to finally meet you. Heard a lot about you. Kimberly said a lot of nice things about you. So I'm Wendy Papasan. I'm a real estate agent here in Austin, Texas, and we have a couple of expansion locations. We have a team in Minneapolis, one in Dallas, and one in Houston, and our hub is in Austin, Texas. I've been doing this real estate thing for about 11 years. We have, in 11 years, we've helped about 1,400 families. And this year we'll do about 225. And for us, we actually have a big milestone that we're celebrating this week, which is $500 million in sales. So it's huge. And that's amazing because it just represents all the families that we've helped over time.
Yeah, awesome. Let's talk a little bit about where do you build wealth, or where are your, I guess, your more passive investments today?
Sure. Well, so Jay and I got into our wealth building journey, and some of you probably know my husband. He's been business partners with Gary Keller for almost 20 years, and we got a huge gift. So when Jay started Keller Williams, Mo Anderson, who was then the president of Keller Williams, was teaching a class on how to read a profit and loss statement, how to read a P&L. And it was something that everyone at Keller Williams International was required to attend. And as luck would have it, everybody else in the company skipped out, and Jay was the only one that showed up. And what I love about the story is, Mo could have canceled it. She could have said, listen, it's just you. Let's do this again when everybody else shows up. But she didn't. She sat down and she taught Jay. And it was a big aha for our family, because she moved from talking about how to read a P&L to really talking about your personal P&L, which is really your net worth. And so Jay came home that day and he said, hey, I had this amazing conversation with Mo. We need to start tracking our net worth. And that was the spark. Right? That was the spark for us, because nobody had ever, prior to that, I had only thought about my income, which is how most of us are taught. Most of us are taught to, become a lawyer, go into sales, be a doctor, because those are all highly paid income positions. But really, where you move from just income is really when you start building your wealth and getting assets for yourself. So that's how we started, and that was about probably about 19 years ago.
19 years ago. Awesome. So he had a one-on-one class that kind of sparked it with Mo, and then you guys started going in on this journey. What was the first asset that you guys purchased?
So right after that conversation, so Jay and I had moved to Austin from New York City. And neither of us are from there, but we had been living there, and that's where we met. I like to say he's 1 in 11 million. And so we were only paying $800 in rent. And so we thought, we are going to rent forever. Like, this is amazing. And then so immediately after that conversation, Jay said, we need to buy a house. Or we discussed it, I don't know. And so we ended up purchasing a house in our neighborhood. We thought we overpaid for it because it was right in about 2000, 2001. It was right when the dot-com frenzy was kind of ending. And we lived in it for 3 years. I got pregnant, and we decided that in order to save our marriage, we needed a second bathroom. And so we moved out of our little 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, and we decided to keep that as a rental property. So our first home became our first rental property. So in essence, that first home was our first asset. And then 3 years later, we, turned it into an investment property.
Awesome. Were you, you weren't producing and selling at that time, were you?
No, so Jay was in real estate for about 10 years. And then I had my son in 2004, and then my daughter in 2005. And that's when I quit my job. My background's in marketing. And so right around that time, Jay wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Investor. And so that's when we did our first flip. Because we wanted to be Jay wanted to be legit for the book. And so Dave Jenks, who's also a co-author, me, and Jay's research assistant at the time, Heather Iaruso, we all decided to do a flip together. So that was really our second real estate deal, which was a total catastrophe. We didn't lose money, but we didn't make any money at all. We made tons of mistakes. We hired a really cheap foundation company, and they broke the plumbing. So any profit we had basically disappeared. And so, so that was our second foray into investing.
One thing I want to point out here, you guys, to everybody watching, a lot of you guys, I mean, the agents in our world and in our real estate community, ask me all the time for the worksheet that we use for evaluating rental properties. I'll get probably 2 to 3 emails a month saying, hey, can you send me the worksheet that you use? And you guys, all that I did was actually our operations manager did was take The Millionaire Real Estate Investor and everything that Jay wrote in the book, we just copied it exactly, and then we just put it in a Google Sheet. And so those of you who haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. But that when you guys ask me for my secret, spreadsheet, it's really exactly what Wendy was talking about. So
and
awesome.
I would add that what I love about MREI is that Jay and Gary and Dave, they wrote that for you guys. They wrote that for the agents of the company, because Gary's passion is for people to live their best lives. And he understands that in order to live our best lives, we probably need some assets to retire on. And so they wrote The Millionaire Real Estate Investor for you guys. And Keller Williams gives us all of the tools to live a huge life, to build a big business, to create passive income for ourselves, be it through profit share or real estate investments. And you guys, you have the choice. Either you do it or you don't.
So give us a little bit more of what your portfolio looks like today again.
Sure. So we have probably about 10% of our net worth is in the stock market. We have, between us, Jay and I own 5 businesses. So I own, we've owned together, obviously, but I run the Papasan Properties Group. We have a home repair and remodeling business, which is under me. I run our investment portfolio. So we have 11 houses, 9 of which are rental properties. And then we have our home and our second home. And then we've got Jay runs, he's obviously, he's an executive at Keller Williams. He runs a publishing company, which is inside of KW. He's what's called an intrapreneur. So he created a couple companies inside of KW. And then he also runs the One Thing business, which is Productive. So, and then, so I think that's probably everything.
Awesome. All right, you guys, I see a lot of you guys are logging in and saying good morning and things like that. This call is for you guys. So whatever questions you guys have for Wendy, trust me, I will totally dominate this whole call and pick her brain myself, but this is made for people in our real estate community. So please send your questions over in the live chat as you get them. Those of you guys who are not subscribed yet, please make sure you subscribe to our channel. We are trying to make a big effort to keep interviewing great people like Wendy. Please subscribe. Another thing is that you actually have your empire building podcast. Mm-hmm. How's that going? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we have a podcast. It's found wherever you download podcasts. It's called Empire Building. And I have 3 amazing co-hosts, Sarah Reynolds, who's the #1 agent in Keller Williams, total rock star. Seychelle Van Poel, she runs a big team out of Dallas. And then Via Williams, she's Ben Kinney's director of growth, and she has a real estate team too. So We are good friends and we talk about all kinds of things, but mainly the gist of it is how to build a big business and even bigger life. So we talk about, energy hacks. We talk about, how to hire great people. We talk about, revenue, profit and loss, being a mom, being a parent during a pandemic, homeschooling, all the stuff. So I highly recommend it. We're about 20 episodes in and it's a lot of fun. We laugh a lot. So
we'll make sure when we send out the recording of this that we link that in as well.
Thank you.
For your time. So our first drill down question comes from Travis, and he says, "Hi Wendy, you mentioned 10% of your net worth is in stocks. Could you break down the percentage for maybe the businesses that you talked about? I mean, it sounds like most of your net worth is probably in businesses. It sounds like a little bit in real estate."
Mm-hmm. Quite a bit in real estate actually, because we've owned properties in Austin, thankfully. It's a rapidly appreciating real estate market. So I would say real estate's probably more like 50% is in our real estate, in our equity in our real estate, just because that's what we know,
Sure.
So.
Awesome. Are you guys still doing flips or is it mostly long-term?
No, we've done a couple. We've done, I think, 2 flips. We developed one subdivision inside of Austin. And yeah, no, in Austin, I've always thought about real estate as a long-term game. So our strategy has always been buy and hold. And then when my kids were young is when I was doing a lot of our real estate investing, and I was the landlady before I even started my real estate business. So just getting a nice single family home with a good tenant that was pretty close by was always our criteria, because we weren't super concerned about having tons of cash flow. Now we're really thinking about the future. I always thought about real estate as a get rich slow scheme.
Okay, there you go.
And so, you look up and you buy one property a year, one property every other year. And then all of a sudden you've got a little portfolio and you're a pretty good landlord. And then your tenants are paying off your debt.
Yeah.
I think that's what most people don't realize. Gene Rivers, who's amazing, one of my mentors, he said to me once, he said, "Wendy, I tell my clients that have kids under 5, would you like to pay for college 20 cents on the dollar?" And of course, his clients are like, "Well, yeah, tell me how." And how you do that is you put 20% down on an investment property, you put it on a 15-year note, and complete strangers pay your debt down for you.
Complete strangers pay for their kids' college.
Yeah, complete strangers are doing that. And I love my tenants. I say, thank you for building my wealth. I try to get them to buy a property, but if they don't want to, that's fine.
Right.
But complete, I'm so grateful to the complete strangers over time that have paid all the debt down on my properties. And we own probably about 5 outright now, so.
Yeah, that is great. Beth has a question. She said, any recommendation for your first investment property? Would you recommend something like a townhouse, duplex, single family? What are your thoughts on that for somebody's just getting started?
So 2 things. If you own a house already, I would do either a lateral move, you could downsize, whatever your financial situation is, keep the first house as a rental. That's what we did. That's a great strategy, because you can buy your second home for as little as 3.5% down. 5% really is probably what you do. You wouldn't have to come up with 25%. If I was younger and I was buying my first home, I would probably buy a duplex, twin home, I guess, maybe is what you guys call it, where I lived in one side and I had a couple of tenants that lived with me, right? I had a couple of roommates. And then the other side I rented out. So I would essentially be living for free. So imagine if you bought a twin home and you could, and the mortgage payment was maybe like $2,000 a month. If you could rent out one side for $1,000 and then you get 2 roommates and they're each paying you $500, you're essentially living for free. And those strangers are paying off your debt for you. I actually had the opportunity to speak at a friend of mine's son's wealth building class. He's 16 years old. And I told them that, and they were just all over that. And they were like in the chat box, they were making fun of each other, like who's going to own the property, who's going to be the roommate, you know, they were just like having a lot of fun with it. And so that's really, if I had to do it all over again, that's what I would do 100%.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for that. Bethany Nelson said she absolutely loves the your empire building podcast. So there's a shout out for you.
Thank you, Bethany.
Okay, so biggest misstep, or I think we learn a lot of times from the times we fail forward. Biggest misstep in your wealth building career, maybe you missed investing on something that you wish you had taken advantage of. Can you walk us through that, please?
Yeah. Well, so we got involved with kind of a, I don't know, it was like kind of a scheme, really. We had a realtor that approached us and several other people at Keller Williams International. And this was this was in 2006, when the market was like blowing and going. And it honestly sounded too good to be true. And I got cold feet at the last minute. And I just said to Jay, I said, this doesn't sound right. But then this realtor and this builder got on the phone with us and kind of bullied us into moving forward. And it turned out that this builder essentially walked away from the project, took all our money, did not finish the home. So we had an unfinished home and no money to finish it. So we had to take out $150,000 in debt and, pay to finish the home. And then it was right then the market tanked. So I turned it into a rental property for 2 or 3 years. And then we sold it. I just couldn't stand it anymore. So we sold it kind of at the bottom of the market, even before I got into real estate. I think it was like 2009, 2010. And we just ended up paying off that $150,000 in debt recently, which is a win. But yeah, that was a huge mistake. Huge.
Sure. I think that's something important that a lot of investors run with it. Sometimes you just walk into a home or you walk into a situation, just like agents, they'll walk in, they get just a bad feeling about something. And I think my takeaway from your story is just follow your gut with it.
Mm-hmm.
And you had some warning bells going off, and as investors and as agents, that happens a lot. And I think that we should, I think the lesson there would be just maybe we listen to it better, or just try to stay in tune with it so we can, you're usually not wrong about those things when they are too good to be true.
100%. That was my $150,000 lesson.
Sure. Victoria has a question. She said, I'm sorry, Kimberly has a question, and Kimberly's question is, okay, so if our spouse didn't literally write the book on real estate investing, how do you encourage someone maybe that you're married to that is not as on board with investing as you might be? Do you have any words of wisdom for us on that?
Well, I think it's pretty common. And those of us that have been inside a Keller Williams any amount of time, we're so blessed to be surrounded by bigger thinking, growth mentality, kind of this idea of like you can do whatever you want to do, which is such a gift to be surrounded by people like that. And a lot of times our spouses don't work in an organization that does that. And so it feels really risky. But at the end of the day, real estate isn't, if you do the numbers right, it's actually not risky. So, meeting that person where they're at, it could be you have to meet them emotionally. They might have some insecurities around owning rental properties. Like I've talked to people who, I actually talked to a friend of mine whose dad owned a lot of rental properties, and he was always having to work on them as a kid. He's just like, no way, I don't want to do that. But like understanding like the emotional part behind it, because most people have a gut reaction to things. And then really talking about mitigating the risk, because at the end of the day, any investing's got risk attached to it. Like you don't get to make money in this world without risk being attached to it. And yet with real estate investing, owning a property over the course of 20 years is about as least risky as you can get. I mean, the stock market's probably the equivalent. Do you want to buy an investment property and cash out in a year or try a flip? No, those are all pretty risky. But just, showing that person, if they're a data person, showing them that information and then getting, the emotional side.
Yeah, so try to build like a little bit of a safety net underneath them, just saying like, if it starts to go south, real estate over time typically wins. And to your point, it's a lot less risky. So making them feel comfortable with, helping them see the emotional side that is actually a pretty safe investment. And here's why.
And then the other thing I would recommend is, Jay and I host a couples goal setting retreat through the One Thing. So you can go to theonething.com, and we have a couple goal setting retreats coming up in November. It's the second and third week in November. And it's a great way to you can drag your spouse there kicking and screaming if they agree to come. And we'll do some wealth building conversations. And I know some people have had good luck by bringing their spouse to that. It'll be virtual this year, so it's really inexpensive.
Yeah, and you get on the same page with your spouse. You guys have been doing that for quite a while. I think I've heard you speak on that before.
Yep, I drug my husband kicking and screaming to it like 13 years ago. He thought we were gonna get divorced or something. He didn't know what was going on. And so yeah, and then we've been doing it for 13 years. It's been amazing for us. It's been part of our success.
Sure. What are your what attributes and criteria are at the top of your list when you start evaluating an investment today for you guys?
Mm-hmm. Well, so we just we've just stuck with what works for us. And that is a minimum three bedroom, 2-bath home. I like in Austin, you can get like usually brick homes or like a limestone home that you don't never have to paint it. Right now, we like to get things that are newer, so there's just less maintenance there. And then something with a new roof or a new, like in Austin, you definitely want like a good air conditioner. It's probably not a priority for you guys there, but having a good AC system, because to replace that's about $6,000. So that's really it. And then if it comes with a tenant, that's a bonus. Then I don't have to mess with it, especially right now. If you could get a property with a tenant in it, with this global pandemic that's going on, it's a good thing.
Yeah, awesome. Tell us a little bit about your daily habits. Like, what are some of the small things you do that like repeat to yours and Jay's success in wealth building?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I would say our number one wealth building habit has been tracking our net worth. And so that started out as a placeholder in our calendar one Sunday a month, where we would, back in the old days, you had to call your mortgage company and you had to go through the phone tree and you had to figure out how much you'd pay down your mortgage that month. And we would carefully fill that number in our spreadsheet. Now we use actually something called personalcapital.com. It's a free service, or a lot of people like mint.com. And you can put all your stuff in there. But if you're just starting out, I would recommend the spreadsheet, because it's a lot more manual and you're thinking about it a lot more. So that's been huge for us, and really setting goals around growing our net worth. When we set our first goal, our net worth was about $2,200. This was right when Jay started at KW. And we were in our 30s. We weren't young. And we set a goal of becoming net worth millionaires. And in about 6.5 years, we became net worth millionaires.
Wow, that is awesome. I hope everybody got to hear that. In your 30s, as a couple, it was 2,200, and then fast forward 6.5 years later, I think a lot of it because of the power of focus that you've had on going, okay, let's set some goals around this. Let's make this a priority in and along with our other real estate businesses. And when you pay attention to that, it's pretty interesting what can happen.
Yeah. And what we kind of figured out these last few years is that, we've had some quite substantial goals about growing our net worth every year. And now we're at the point where some of the things that we put into place, like some of the businesses we started 2, 3, 10 years ago, are paying off today. So in order to grow your net worth, it's really that time on task over time. But that's been the number one habit. And then the couples goal setting retreat, that's just a once a year thing, but that's been really powerful for us as a couple, for sure.
Did you guys, when you were at 2,200 in net worth and you're just getting started, did you guys go off and buy a rental property, do a flip, start paying down your house? Did you kind of like attack it that way, or did you how did you, I guess, attack it? Was it singular? Like you would go, okay, let's get our house on a solid ground first, and then you move up from there? Or did you just hit it super hard out the gate and try to consume all?
Well, one of the things that we did was we said, we're going to start an investment fund. So we opened up a totally separate bank account that was not attached to our checking account. So obviously we could still access it, but it was a little bit harder to access it. And we committed to putting $1,500 a month in that account. And I'll just say, sometimes the feedback I get is people are like, oh, well, Jay's worked at Keller Williams and you're a big time real estate agent. You guys are rich. And when we started, I worked for the state of Texas. I made about $42,000 a year, which was the most I'd ever made in my life. And Jay was the lowest paid employee at Keller Williams. And we know that because someone anonymously put a list of everyone that worked at KW at the time on his desk. So he actually made less than the receptionist. He was a lowly writer moving from New York. And so, together we were making less than $85,000 a year. And so that was a big commitment for us, $1,500 a month, and to put that aside. And the other habit I would say that we've adopted and we haven't let go of is really this idea of living very, very, very below your means. And that means, when we bought our second house, we didn't remodel it. We had, it was filled with used furniture. We had carpet in the bathroom. And we took our money and we bought investment properties instead. And what I see a lot of agents do is, their house has to be perfect. They're constantly remodeling. They have a, $100 budget every month for pillows at Target. And, that's great. And I appreciate, obviously, being in real estate, having your home be your castle. And yet I see so many people who spend so much money and they never think about putting aside any of it for investing.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, especially right now, you guys, in a time when commissions are coming in a little bit easier than they have in the past, especially at a time when a lot of our agents are earning more than they ever have. I hope you got to hear Wendy when she had said that, where, keep these habits. And I think you said it that you still do that today. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I pay myself an income on the real estate team. I pay myself a little under $100,000 a year. Jay gets a salary at KWI, and then all the money we make from the businesses is in a totally separate account. We've got a totally separate account for profit share. Our profit share is like doing amazing this year. It's great. Last year we made about $43,000 in profit share, which is like, what?
Yeah.
When you think about passive, and that's one of our assets, like that's on our net worth sheet, is our passive income, is our KW profit share. And the rest of it is savings, investing, having money for opportunities, things like that. And we absolutely live off our incomes.
Can we talk, you talked about it a little bit earlier in the call when you said that there was a difference between the income that you make and growing your net worth. A lot of, I think, agents, we get into this trap of, okay, we'll just make more money, or we will, the way to grow our worth is to like earn our way to it. Can you touch on that a little bit more? Because making a commission is not necessarily building wealth.
No.
Commission is just.
Well, and I would say it's really about what you spend. It's not about what you make. So a few years ago, you probably heard about a janitor who ended up dying and had a net worth of about $8 million. And $6 million of it he gave to a local hospital and a local university, and he gave $2 million of it to his kids. And I would tell you that after he died, a lot of people wanted to emulate him. They wanted to be like this guy. They wanted to have that $8 million. But during his lifetime, I bet not a lot of people who knew him wanted to emulate him, because he was working on a janitor's salary, and he was able over time to have a net worth of $8 million.
Yep.
50-some% of Americans don't have $10,000 in assets.
Yeah, it's part of the reason I appreciate you talking about this so much with us, because it seems like it's going the other way too, where it's more and more people are saving less and less, and really making the break to try to live a big life, and finances and wealth building is one of those areas.
Yeah. Well, and here's the truth, Caleb, is that if you make more than $33,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of income earners in the world. We are all wealthy. Everyone listening to this call is wealthy beyond measure. And so what are you doing with the rest of your money, right? How are you spending it, right? It's not about what you make, it's about what you spend. And what I see a lot of real estate agents do is the more money they make, the more money they spend. You know, Jay drives a 12-year-old Highlander. You know, we don't spend money on cars. When we do buy a car, he's super excited to be getting his new car. My son just came, so he's really excited about it. He's going to get the new Bronco.
Oh, there you go.
Curious? Yep. And so we pay cash. We did a huge remodel on our house last year. We paid cash for it. We don't have a lot of debt. We've got the real estate debt, and that's about it. And it's not about what you make. It's about what you spend. At the end of the day.
It's a common theme we're seeing with people just like yourself, where they go, we get into this habit of being content with whatever it is we're earning. To your point of $33,000 is in the top 1% if you spread it out across the world. Being content with what you're making, and then what are you doing with it, and where's it going, and what are you investing in? How are you holding it accountable at that point is really what determines that trajectory of your growth, of your wealth, and where you're placing it. So controlling that outflow when an agent earns a lot. I remember going around and looking at foreclosures in 10 and 11, and a lot of those foreclosures during that time, looking at them as investment properties, a lot of those foreclosures, you guys, were agents' properties. Mm-hmm. So just to Wendy's point about earning more income, it's what you do with it, what really matters, and can you use it to fund your wealth building journey?
Yeah. Well, and I'll just say that's not the fun part. Most of us are entrepreneurial, and we like to grow. We like to make money. I'm the same way. I don't think it's fun. I don't think it's fun to get my P&L. I'm not like, woo, P&L time. And then, you know, my ops director will look through all of our expenses every quarter. We'll literally print out every credit card report and every single bank account. And that is honestly, it's the worst day of the quarter. I hate that stuff. It's not fun, you know? So it's not just a behavioral thing, but if you guys want to really be successful, it's really about expense management. That's it. And it's not fun. It's not very not fun.
Yeah, slicing those expenses, and then especially if your team thinks they need it or things like that, it is not an enjoyable experience, I'm sure. Let's talk a little bit more about your sales team, and then like how that kind of works and feeds through to your investment. Like, does one lead the other? Do you try to buy every house that you go into first? You know, how do they work together?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say, honestly, most of the properties we bought haven't really been under market. You know, we bought one house in 2006 before I became a realtor. I bought it off Craigslist. I didn't know what I was doing. It ended up being, I mean, I would never tell a client to buy this house now, knowing what I know, but I bought it anyway. And we've held it over time, and it's worth a lot more than it was. And complete strangers have paid my debt down. I went on one FSBO appointment, and I bought one of those properties because it really met our criteria, and it was kind of time for us to buy. And then recently we just had a listing. We asked the seller if they would be interested in selling it. And so we bought it. But most of the properties we bought have been on the MLS. I think there's a big misconception. People think like, I need to get a huge bargain to get into investing. I need to be at 20% below market. I mean, most of us live in markets where that's just not possible, you know? So we've just bought our properties mostly at market value. We've put enough money down so that the property cash flows, right? So that over time we can build up the savings account so that when it's time to put a new roof on, or time to put a new AC unit on in there, we have enough money to do that. And that's it. You know, we're not living off that money. the idea is that someday we'll be able to sell that and finance, my kids' education. Jay and I will be able to go into a nicer, nursing home. And you guys should be doing this for your clients too. It's part of your fiduciary duty to understand investing. I find lots and lots of agents don't want to bother, they don't care about it. But I tell my agents, hey, if you were to help over the course of a 10-year real estate career, 10 families a year buy one home, right? So over the course of 10 years, you would have significantly affected the lives of over 100 families by just asking the question, hey, have you guys thought about keeping this house as an investment property at a listing appointment? Or, hey, have you guys ever thought about buying a rental property? Interest rates are so low. And over the course of 10 years, you would send kids to college. You would be able to put people into a better nursing home facility. I mean, lots and lots of things. Just one rental property per family.
Amen. Amen. Our job, if you're an agent just buying and selling, but not really spending time to understanding investing, you're kind of hurting yourself, number one, and your clients, number two, as part of your fiduciary. That's a huge takeaway I just got from you.
I would say that a lot of agents have a story in their head about like, oh, I can't, I'm not going to get financing. I need 2 years to buy a house, this and that, and this and that. Like a lot of you right now you're having that story in your head. And I will tell you that most of the properties that Jay and I bought at the beginning, we didn't use any of our own money. We either bought them in a partnership or, two of our best investments have been homes that we've lived in, that we bought for 5% down. So there's lots of creative ways to finance properties too.
Can you help me understand a little bit better of how your real estate team, how does that play into your net worth? Like, do you put that on your personal financial statement? Do you not? How do you look at that?
We do. We value all of our businesses very, very conservatively. Sometimes I hear people talk about like 5 times earnings and stuff like that for the real estate team. I'm like, who's going to buy your business for that? And so what we do is we just value it as last year's basically net profit.
Net profit. Can you explain? I think that might be a first time that some people might have heard that term. What's a net earnings?
Yeah, net profit is just all the GCI you make minus all your expenses, and that's your net. And that includes, like I pay myself a salary. If you guys don't pay yourself a salary, you probably should think about doing that at a certain point in your business so that you have a placeholder for yourself. And then, so just really that net profit.
Talk a little bit about a multiple too. I bet you some of our people listening right now don't have been exposed to what a multiple is on a business.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times when businesses are evaluated, they are, there's people who do this for a living. They evaluate businesses based on, what's your database look like? Who's on your team? What's your GCI? What's your revenue? And so I know a lot of people value their teams at like a 5 times earnings, which is 5 times net. And but you have to think about who's really the buyer for that. There's not a lot of people who would actually even buy most of our real estate teams.
Well, especially if that agent is the number one producer on that team, right? Who's going to buy a team that the agent is the number one producer? And as soon as you buy them, exactly. I mean, you're gonna have to put them on like a working contract to keep that revenue up because they're usually the highest producer. But if you have a business that runs itself, now you're talking where you might be able to maybe get a multiple or 2 out of it because it's running itself as an asset and you're outside of it. So a 7th level team.
Yeah. So like 10 less this year, I've had years where I haven't done any sales. This year, probably about 10% of the sales have been from me. So very little. I'm basically, I don't know what I do all day. I guess I talk to people on Zoom. So just like less than 10%. So if I walk away from the business, it's probably worth about 10% less plus, whatever I'm doing as like the CEO of it.
Yeah, you'd have the benefit of adding your salary back in though, right? So whoever stepped in could at least get that salary too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Tell us, okay, I want to jump to your empire building podcast a little bit here. Can you give me like the biggest takeaway that you have had in hosting that, interviewing it, Give me one or two good nuggets that you've learned from having that podcast.
Well, it's not really the podcast, but I think the best way to learn is to teach. And Gary Keller built, he's a billionaire now. He built this huge, massive empire with the idea that what we wake up and do every day as realtors is we educate people. And so whatever way you guys can do that in your real estate world, whether it's having one-on-one conversations over the kitchen table with clients, doing webinars for your people, I just know that's how I learn a lot. And that's how I push myself is I'm like, well, I'm going to do this podcast, and I certainly don't know all the answers, so I have to research and then learn about it and then teach it. And that's how I got started talking about wealth building. Actually, I guess it was about 3 years ago, one of the market centers in Minneapolis, actually Sean Gores, he invited me to come speak on wealth building. Actually, it was Perry Hirth invited me to come speak on wealth building. And I had never taught wealth building 3 years ago. And since then I've taught it. And while doing so, I've become better at wealth building.
Yeah, and it's amazing the need that's out there. It's a great way to serve and help others, especially if it's one of your strengths, which obviously it is for you. Like a great way to give to other people, a lot like our agents give when they help their buyers or sellers maybe buy a rental. When you teach a wealth building class, it does a lot for you, and it's just a great way to give, because there is a big gap right now, from our school systems and different pieces where it's just not taught. Money management and building wealth and working on running a business. It's one of the things that we've been blessed with at Keller Williams to be able to learn over time.
Well, and then if you guys are interested in it, I'm also chairman of the board for Keller Williams KidScan, which is one of Gary Keller's charities. And we teach a class called Quantum Leap. It's QL for young adults. And so if you guys are passionate about helping people figure out why they're on this planet, or if you need to figure out why you're on this planet, the best way to learn is to teach. You can go to kwkc.org and learn how to teach Quantum Leap to young people. And I'm also, if you guys are interested in it, I'm selling lots of stuff today. I'm teaching a class with Nikki Miller. She's a team leader in California. We're teaching from 11 to 3 Central Time, Quantum Leap. Suggested donation of $25. You can go to my Facebook page and find it, or you can go to kwkc.org and take Quantum Leap. And again, so it's like I do lots and lots of teaching every single week, and I love it. And I think about my husband, who the first time I ever saw him on stage, I was so proud, but I felt so awkward for him because he was so bad at it. And so don't feel like you have to be really good at it at the beginning to be a teacher. Maybe you're not naturally gifted at speaking. I mean, the first time I ever spoke, I was so nervous. I just thought I was going to vomit. And over time, I've become good at it. And now Jay gets paid, tens of thousands of dollars to speak at corporations across the world. And some of you probably saw him on stage that first time, and it was not pretty. No,
yeah.
It wasn't pretty.
It's just like buying that first rental property or something like that. Same thing. It's going to push you to grow, and it's going to push you to make investment and get outside of your comfort zone. And the more you do it, the better and easier it gets. Just like with what you're saying with your public speaking.
Yeah, and people who do all these things, they're afraid too. Mm-hmm. I've had so many episodes of fear and horrible things that have happened in investing and things like that. And the difference between someone like me and somebody like you, if you're thinking you don't want to do it because it's too risky, is it's not that I'm not afraid. It's that I do it anyway.
Absolutely. You work it, you go in spite of that fear. Let's jump to like your legacy. So how does wealth building play in terms of like legacy and your future plans?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're starting a charitable fund this year. So there's that. That's pretty exciting. Our goal is to give away $100,000 this year to charity. So that's a huge goal. Of course, we've got our profit share downline, which is really, if you guys have teenagers, no, if you have any kids, only one of them is going to get profit share. So It's kind of like Santa Claus. You're just like, well, you better behave or your sister's going to get profit share. So that'll be part of our legacy, is because you get to pass it on, which is incredible. And you get to manipulate your children along the way. And then, of course, I think my main legacy is really to be able to share the gift of wealth building with people. You know, I'm so passionate, you know, people on my team, you know, Jay and I had this goal several years ago to help people become net worth millionaires. And I turned to Jay one day and I said, well, we have this goal and we talk about it on stage, but what are we really doing to help people become net worth millionaires? So we started what we call the Hot Millionaire Club. It's just for our team and for Jay's team, because who doesn't want to be a hot millionaire? Hello. And so we teach our team about wealth building. So every month we come together. Anybody who's on the club, they track their net worth. They have goals around wealth building. We talk about all kinds of things. We read books together. And so like, I'm hoping that's my legacy, really, is this idea of, you know, my mission is to empower and inspire big thinking leaders to create lives of abundance. And passive income is a big part of that for me. So hopefully, you know, one of you listening here today will get inspired and become a millionaire and teach your kids about money and teach your clients about money and just kind of like pass that on.
Okay, so next is like, where do you go for education? You can't say any of Jay's or Gary's writings. Where are you reading right now? What are you working on? How are you developing yourself?
Okay. Well, a couple things. I read 3 really good books this year that I highly, highly, highly recommend. The best one, I think, is called The Psychology of Money. And I can send you who wrote it. But the second one is, it's called Happy Money. Okay. And there's actually 2 books called Happy Money, and they're both quite good. But the one that I read was, we actually did it for book club, and then the person who was reading the book read the wrong one, so it's pretty funny. It's called Happy Money, The Science of Happier Spending by Elizabeth Dunn and Dr. Mike Norton. The Psychology of Money is by Morgan Housel. And then The Simple Path to Wealth, I read it 2 times this year by J.L. Collins. Actually, The Simple Path to Wealth changed my thinking about money a lot in a good way. And then the other thing that's really fun is you go to investor.gov and you can play with the compound interest calculator there and just do that. I mean, it's been a pandemic.
That's what you do.
Sadly, a pandemic pastime. It's sad.
No, it's super interesting, the reading that you're doing in and around the topic of wealth building money. Very much, it sounds very much like habit driven. Well, the psychology of it. A lot of what I've been noticing is that it's people's financial future is made up of a lot of like their past and how they view things and maybe some things that they have inside of their head and their habits that either serves them really, really well and shoots them to, you know, great heights, or can kind of erode at that wealth building. Would that safe to say about the books that you just called off?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, we're all a result of how we were patterned as kids. You know, I didn't grow up with an abundance mentality around money. You know, I don't know if you know, but I'm originally from Moorhead, Minnesota. So I grew up in a small town in northern Minnesota where, you know, nobody talks about leverage. You know, my great grandmother shoveled her walk until she was like 99 years old. And I had a real scarcity mentality. So I thought that all I should do is be thrifty, was to save money, save money, save money, save money. And so everybody's got their own story around money. You know, I thought money was bad, money was evil. My parents fought about money a lot. My dad was a saver and my mom was she was a spender. And so I became a saver like my dad, and that served me well. And I still have some weird issues about money, saving money. But you have to understand that about yourself. and then work to surround yourself with people who are thinking bigger than yourself. I think for me, that's been the best thing in terms of like changing my mentality around money, is just who you're surrounding yourself with. And so like for you to do these series with your team, or so, it's just so great because you can hear people talk candidly. And you know, if you know, I've always tried to create community around money. When I first started my real estate business, I did this thing called Millionaire Mochas, where I'd invite my friends to come to the coffee shop, and it was like a lead generation thing for me. And like only a few people would show up, but I'd send it out to like 2,000 people. And then we have these millionaire meals at our house. I've always really known that I need to change my thinking around money. And the only way you can do that over time, it's over time. You know, it's just, and so this is like, you're looking at 20 years of thinking about money, studying money, studying investing. It's not something that's going to happen in a day.
Yeah, you pick up those little pieces as you go, kind of in your walk with it. Okay, you guys, we have Wendy for about 5 more minutes. Please get your last minute questions in. If you've gotten great value from Wendy, like I have, please give her the thumbs up and like the video. Send some nice messages through the chat that we can share with her. And last call for questions. So what's one specific? Actually, one question I didn't get to that came from our viewers was thoughts on VRBO properties. What are your thoughts on those in this market and kind of what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think they're kind of risky. A lot of people are selling their VRBOs right now because they can't pay for it. Having said that, I do actually have a vacation rental in Minnesota, near Pelican Rapids, Minnesota. So that's another thing I'll sell right now. Is we do have a nice house there, but it was gifted to me from my dad. So I don't owe any money on it. So if I don't make money on it, it's totally fine. I think there's a place for short-term rentals, but again, I think the best rental that you can buy has to kind of cash flow right away, and probably not with an exorbitant daily rate. It's really, can it cash flow if you just had to rent it out monthly, and then everything else is a bonus.
Yeah, we're experiencing this very sharp, very high unemployment rate. And the first thing people typically do as soon as they lose their job, their income gets cut, they cut spending, and leisure and hospitality and VRBOs, things like that. I think those are some of the first things that go for people.
Yep, for sure.
They chop it right out of their budget. So I'm in the same mindset with that.
On the other hand, it might be a good opportunity right now to pick one up. You know, you don't have to make money off of it if you could pay for it for cash or something like that, because I have a feeling, and as soon as the pandemic lifts, there's going to be lots and lots and lots of travelers, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so just a couple ahas people have posted in the chat. Thank you so much for doing this, Wendy. It's not that I am not afraid, it's that I do it anyway, was a takeaway that Lauren had. Robert Crane said, surround yourself with successful people. Thank you so much for that. Brandy said, love this interview. Thanks so much for joining us, Wendy, and sharing your wisdom. Learn from your experiences. Your story and growth is inspirational. Love you, thumbs up, love you. There's a whole bunch of them. So yeah, thank you. Thanks so much. What's like one takeaway our group can just leave here and do right away, that advice that you'd have for building wealth?
The easiest and best habit that you can adopt is to track your net worth.
Need that scorecard.
What that will do is every time you want to spend something, every time you want to buy a new sofa or a new car, your net worth is going to go down, and you do not want to win. You do not want your net worth to go down. You want to win the net worth game. So, yeah,
awesome. All right, Wendy. Well, we won't keep you any longer. Thank you so much. The thank yous are pouring in right now. So, how can people find you if they want to either find more about your podcast, speaking events, or anything with you? How do the people reach you?
Sure. Well, usually I post lots of stuff on Instagram, so I'd love it if you wanted to follow me on Instagram. You can go to empirebuildingpodcast.com to find out more information about where to download the podcast. I'm on Facebook. You know, you can look me up on Kelly.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Wendy. We'll probably put the links, you guys, to the books that Wendy had put off. We'll put the links to her podcast. I think we've already posted on the KW Kids Can, so people can find that. And just thank you again. We have a ton of gratitude for it. I love what you're teaching on right now, helping other people. It's like the quickest way I feel like we can help people to even give more is just by helping them get their finances in order, start building some wealth.
Yeah, that's good stuff you can do.
I appreciate you very much. So thanks so much for joining us.
Bye.
And hopefully we can talk again soon.
An awesome day.